The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Well, everybody, Kevin Sylvester, Mike Giannetti. This is an emergency edition, not really an emergency, but a breaking news edition of the Spot Track.
Sort of, one day late.
Well, we were at a roast last night, so it was a roast, right? Anyhow, We were at a roast last night when the news broke. Bryce Harper with his contract, so we're going to talk about that.
Finally,
deal.
Kevin. Finally,
that deal. 13 years, $330 million.
Is that it?
Well,
That's
we're gonna find out what it really
That's
is,
right.
because there's taxes and such involved. So we thought, whom better to bring on than the sports tax man himself. Here's our conversation. We spoke just a little bit ago with Robert Raiola. Well, with the big contract for Bryce Harper and other big contracts in baseball, we had to figure out tax ramifications, Mike, on where Harper did and didn't sign, because there were plenty of offers out there. So we're going right to the tax man himself.
Right, the sports tax man.
The @sports tax man on Twitter, Robert Raiola from PKF O'Connor Davies. Great to have you on again, Robert.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. Always a pleasure.
Well, let's talk about taxes here and what Bryce Harper did by signing it in Philadelphia. I mean, first off, 13 years and $330 million is a massive amount of money.
Anywhere, yeah.
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah, no matter.
Maybe not Canada, but
That's true. And there was a massive.
You learn well, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. There were massive offers from other teams, including in California, between the Dodgers and the Giants. So let's start with the Phillies contract first, and just tell everybody, what does that equate to in after-tax dollars overall, and what tax factors go into playing in Pennsylvania for Bryce Harper?
Sure. So the first thing is, just so everybody, all your listeners are aware of the contract, it's $330 million for 13 years. In the first year, he would get a $10 million salary and $20 million signing bonus. Years 20 through 28, he would get $26 million salary, and then he'd drop off to the paltry sum in 29 through 31 of $22 million. So that adds up to $330 million. What I figured out is he's a Nevada resident. That's been established. That's pretty widely well known. And what I figured out, he's going to keep his, obviously deducted that, he's going to keep his Nevada residency, and he will pay tax to Philadelphia at about 3.5%, and Pennsylvania, strange, but Philadelphia has a higher rate than the state, at 3%. So it's about 6.5% that he will be paying, only on the days worked in Pennsylvania. So the Phillies obviously having spring training in Florida. It comes out to be about 41% of his income will be taxed in Florida. He'll be taxed in Pennsylvania. Then he will pay as he comes to visit, as works his way up and down the American League East. He'll pay tax when they go visit the Mets, when they go visit the Braves, and as they go to California or other states. So all of a sudden, when is $330 million really not $330 million? Well, when you're Bryce Harper, the $330 million will turn into a whopping $184 million after taxes. So although he's still not going to be starving at $184 million, it is a big reduction. And as I always say, it's not the gross, but it's the net.
So 330 turns out to I
56%.
I can't believe I'm about to say only 184.
Yeah.
Right? That's well now, but what? That's just in taxes, but
federal income tax, state income tax, which is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and also the jock tax on the road, California, the other states, Wisconsin, and also his Medicare and Social Medicare, Social Security, and Medicare surcharge taxes.
The question I had on this was, under our current new tax code, there are certain, can he itemize anymore? Meaning agent fees, training fees. Has that all changed under the new tax law, and does that factor into negotiating these contracts?
Well, those fees are no longer tax deductible for federal income tax purposes. So all the fees that you mentioned wouldn't. Can he itemize? I would imagine that he probably can. He's married, so the standard deduction for a married couple is $24,000. So what goes into is the calculation? You have to look at his state income taxes, which, even though it's a lot higher, is only capped at $10,000. You have his mortgage interest and his charity. I think he's a pretty charitable fellow, so I would imagine he'd be over the $24,000, and he would use that. For purposes of my calculation, I don't know what those numbers were. I only speculate when I do these types of calculations. I always felt the best way to do it, and Mike has concurred. The best way to do it is based solely on the contract that you know about. Don't speculate on the endorsements because you have no idea what he's making in endorsements. But I think he will itemize, and again, $330, bang, net to $184.
Incredible. I got a couple of.
One more.
Go ahead.
Yeah. $10 million in salary, $20 million in bonus.
That's right where I'm going.
Yeah.
What does that mean, Robert? What does the bonus do for this?
In this situation, the bonus doesn't do anything for him for Pennsylvania purposes, because in Pennsylvania, the signing bonus will still be taxable. In most states, as long as you have the proper language in the contract, and I'll lay that out for you guys. As long as the signing bonus is payable separately from salary, it always is. As long as it's not predicated upon subsequent performance, and the third condition is it's non-refundable. As long as all those conditions are met, most states won't tax the signing bonus. However, in Pennsylvania, he would be taxing the signing bonus. But so there's really no difference. The only advantage is in the first year, he's going to get $20 million. He might get it up front. He might get it during the season. It doesn't matter. But where you'll see the difference is when we get to the Giants and the Dodgers, there's a lot of opportunity there, and that's where I think we're talking about Machado also. That's where I think Machado may have missed the boat a little bit. Machado is a Florida resident, and he also only got a $20 million signing bonus. However, if he would have got a bigger signing bonus, any signing bonus, that would be not taxable in California. So I think his agent maybe the team didn't want to give it to him, but I think that's a big factor with these guys. And the more signing bonus you get when you're playing in a high tax state and you're a resident of no tax state, the better treatment you're going to get.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Let's
now,
turn.
The other thing is on Harper, he could have taken the signing bonus in year 2, in year 9, year 13. It doesn't make a difference. It's still signing bonus, and he would beat some of the other state taxes. But in this case, he's not beating Pennsylvania and Philadelphia.
Man. So this was a tough state for him. This is a tough team to sign with.
It's the thing that gets you is the local tax.
Yeah.
Because the state tax is very, very low at 3.07%, but the local tax being at 3.5%, that sort of adds up to 6.5%. You sort of or in the middle of the pack on tax rates there.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, you're fairly close to California, right? I mean, you've done some numbers on this. Had he signed with the Dodgers or the Giants, what would the numbers have had to be?
Sure. So the Giants, the offer that's out there was 12 years, $310 million, which wouldn't have put him anywhere close on net dollars. So I figured out if the Giants paid him $340 million after taxes, that number would be the same as the Phillies paying him $330 million. So he would have to pay more money in California. Now remember too, what the Giants could have done and what the Dodgers could have done is they could have really loaded up on the signing bonus. Yep. They could have said, okay, we're going to give you $310 million was the Giants' offer. We'll give you $75 million. We'll give you $100 million as signing bonus. Again, it doesn't mean that you get the check tomorrow. It just means you spread it out over time, and you would get around paying the California taxes as long as those conditions we mentioned were in there.
So why didn't they do that? Why wouldn't you go?
We don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Kevin. But we don't know if they did that or not because we don't know. It's almost like spilt milk now, right? The horse is out of the barn. The Giants didn't get him. They can say whatever they want, but I think taxes do come into play a little bit here. That maybe we know the Nationals' best offer was $300 million, but it was speculated as $300 million. But was it really $300 million if $100 million was deferred? The present value of the contract would have been a lot less. So even though he wouldn't have paid any state taxes working in D.C., as we discussed last time I was on the show, it's a big difference because you're not getting the money now.
So let's go there. That's a perfect transition. I was surprised. I'm not sure if you were you surprised there was no deferred money in this?
Shocked.
Yeah.
And I'll take that one step further. You throw in Harper and Machado. The combined deferred comp on the two deals was exactly right. No deferred comp.
$0. Yeah. Incredible, because I mean that's essentially, especially in Harper's case, being a resident of Vegas, that's where you save all your money, right?
Right. The deferral system would have worked out real well and worked out well for Scherzer in D.C. or whatnot, but I guess he didn't want to go back there or whatever. And look, at the end of the day, what's the difference between 300 and 330? But easy for you and I to say it's not our money, but it's good for the guy wanted to be above 325.
Yeah.
Boros and him are highly competitive guys, especially with Boros driving the ship. You knew he had to get above Giancarlo Stanton's contract.
So I'm still fascinated by, so it would have made sense. The new tax code when you can't deduct your agent fees anymore.
Because Boros made about $10 million off this,
Correct.
right?
Correct. And that stuff's got to, this is just another thing for a professional athlete to factor in when he's going to sign somewhere and play somewhere when it comes to taxes, because it's significant. I mean, you think about that, Rick, you're taking half. I mean, roughly half, whatever. I mean, $330 million's $184 just from the
56%.
tax part, right?
Yeah.
That's not even him having to have two residences, which, yes, he can afford it all, so on and so forth here. But it's just astonishing to me how much is getting taken in by tax.
So Robert, we've got maybe 5-6 young players who are 2-3 years away from being in this position, right? I mean, the Mookie Bettses and the Chris Bryants and Lindor, and now Mike Trout too, of course. It sounds like, I mean, if deferred money isn't the way these players want to go, and maybe it isn't, maybe cash in hand now, especially with a new CBA and things like that coming, you never know how the structure might change. But it sounds to me like getting a massive signing bonus is the way to go here. Is that not the case?
It can't hurt you. I'm not an agent, so I don't know the way it goes into the calculation of AAV. Mike, as you probably know in hockey, the guys load up on signing bonuses because, in God forbid, in case there is a strike, you get paid no matter what if you have a signing bonus.
Right, non-refundable, right?
Hockey. That's right. So I don't know what the deal is in baseball with that, but again, you remember what we talked about, Mike, is the signing bonus doesn't have to be all up front, like a true signing bonus, like in the next day. Like, you do in college football, when you come into the pros with college, they get it relatively quickly. You can take the money and you can just break up the salary. And it's interesting in both Manny and Harper's deals, they got the signing bonuses in the first year, and but at the same time, they lowered the salary. So in other words, if he was going to make $30 million a year, and he had $20 million salary, well, $20 million in bonus, the salary is only $10 million. So it's not as if they put the signing bonus on top of $30 million in salary. They just cut, 6 and 1, half dozen the other. They increased the bonus and they decreased the salary. So I think the deferral could have worked a little bit. I don't know what the Players Association thinks about that. Maybe that's a bit of a factor, but Boras is going to trumpet the fact that he got him $330 million forever.
Yeah, and to that point, just to add on, the cash flow was even, as you stated, about 30, 26, 22 down the line, but in terms of the tax purposes, the luxury tax purposes, the signing bonus just prorates. So it's $20 million divided by 13 years. So it's beneficial to the team to have a massive signing bonus and then lower your salaries on an annual basis, because that will stretch out or lower your AAV, which is the tax number. So if the luxury tax is to me, that's why Bryce Harper's got 13 years.
Sure,
because 10 at 330, $33 million a year on the luxury tax. That's a lot of dough. But 25, not too bad. Plenty of room for Mike Trout now.
Yeah, I think that's correct. That's what I read also, that it definitely makes sense to have gone out to 13 years instead of 10. It's almost like, who was it in hockey, Mike, that they did that with? There was a big...
Rick DiPietro. You had Shea Weber.
Zach Parise.
Yeah.
Shea Weber and Zach Parise. Yes.
Yeah, Suter and Parise had the same contract going to Minnesota.
Ovechkin's got like a 13, right?
Yep.
They spread that out.
Yeah, spread it out.
Ovechkin and I think it was also Kovalchuk.
That's right. Big one.
That contract was crazy.
So it's not. so the 13 wasn't crazy to me because I understood that part of it initially. It's shocking to a lot of people to see 13 years for Bryce Harper, and some of the semantics did shock me. But I think for the most part, the lack of deferred money was just that blew me away because we've had discussions with Robert here, because we know how much that means to him just from a cash standpoint. I mean, he forfeited a lot of money being in Philadelphia without deferred money and with a fairly small signing bonus. So, that's what we got here.
I was actually shocked, and more so on Machado because it's California. Yeah.
Bryce, if you're listening, you should have talked to Robert.
Robert is for hire.
Right, yeah, you should have talked to Robert beforehand, before you inked. Or, frankly, Scott Boras, maybe you should call Robert.
I think Bryce did his homework. It took 117 days to get here, right?
No kidding.
I mean, good Lord.
He wanted some time off. Who are we kidding? Hey, Robert, before we let you go, I just want to go back to, this is the first year under the new tax laws. Do you think athletes have been hit by this? Meaning, hey, a lot of people I know, middle-class America, friends are like, man, I'm not getting the return I usually get, or, oh, gosh, I actually owe money. This wasn't supposed to be the case because they're taking home more money in paychecks. Has that been the case for athletes and clients that, it's nothing specific, but have athletes been hit hard by this?
I think where the athletes benefited was the rate, like with everybody, the top rate went from 39.6 to 37, so that was a benefit. However, there was a couple things that are really hitting the athletes hard. Number one is the state taxes. the state tax, with the reduction of the state taxes now capping it at measly $10,000 combined between state taxes and real estate taxes, it makes the difference between playing in a high tax state like California and a no tax state, say like Florida, exponentially larger. It used to be if Manny Machado was paying all these California taxes, he'd get a write-off for approximately 40% of it on his federal return. That's no longer the case. So combined with the fact that you no longer deduct agent fees, union dues, or whatnot, it's a big hit. What we're seeing with a lot of our guys is we adjusted the withholding during the year, and so that way we know whether we planned out before we ran tax returns. So hopefully we don't get any surprises, and hopefully they're just as near as to where we thought they would be.
It's a good time of year to know that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
well,
NFL free agency.
That's
Those non-tax teams start pushing this stuff out on Twitter,
that'd
right?
be another great topic for another podcast.
Yeah, no kidding.
When we approach that, and again, I always love telling the Ndamukong Suh story. When he signed as a free agent, he got $60 million gross with the federal tax and no state tax in Florida, but some jock tax. He netted 36. If the Lions wanted to match, they would have had to pay him 65, and as we know, he's further into their cap. And if the Raiders were rumored to be in the running, they would have had to pay him 70.1, and he's further into their cap. So again, that's when you really see the best gross deal may not be the best net deal, and you see the California teams and all those teams with the high tax states overpaying. Where I think you got a little bit interesting that you've never seen before in the NFL free agency this year, or even in the draft, is what do you do if you're drafted by the Raiders?
Yeah.
What do you do about signing a free agent? I'll tell you what you don't
backload
do.
your contract.
Money in this.
Yeah.
Well, you don't. That's right. You don't take a lot of money this year. Normally, the signing bonuses are all paid by the second year, but for sure they're going to be in California this year. You don't know where they're going to be next year, but you may want to push your money back at least until further into the summer next in 2020, because what happens if they do the OTAs in California and you get your money then? Then you're still in California.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Plenty more coming, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Robert, thanks so much for your time. Robert Raiola at Sports Taxman. Follow him on Twitter, and it's PKF O'Connor Davies is the firm Robert works for. Robert, thanks for your expertise.
Thanks, fellas. Have a great weekend.
All right, I'm kind of sick over. No, I'm like, everybody wants to make all this money, right?
It kind of feels good to be average, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I'd like to experience that problem at some point, right? There goes anybody out there listening who's freelances, and you get paid. It's like just put half of it aside because half of it's gone. And I experienced some of that through my working in professional golf. With what state did you work in and all that stuff. So not nearly as much as professional athletes have to do. But, man, that is just eye-opening number. I mean, I thought it'd be like 220 that he'd net, 230, maybe paid $100 million in taxes.
55%.
That is just ridiculous.
Off the top.
That is crazy.
It befuddles me why there isn't a $50 million bonus on this contract. Knowing what we know.
Right.
I mean, it took us a 3-minute conversation with Robert. I hope these guys are having those conversations because that's a lot of money to lose based on structure. That's all this is. It's structure. He's going to make the 330 one way or another. Why not make 50 million of that a bonus?
Well, don't you think? I mean, listen, between Machado and Harper here, don't you think all those conversations are just about the final number, the 330, right?
I mean, I get it from the agent standpoint. I get the headline. I get it. But at some point, somebody's got to be in these guys' ears saying, listen, man, you're about to lose, $120 million.
Right. Well, let's talk about the bonus thing because I thought that was interesting. When you call it signing bonus, but you have to put the money in escrow, I always thought. Like in the NFL, if you're going to sign a player with a signing bonus, I'm 98% sure that money's got to be in escrow in order to cover the bonus, right? This is why Khalil Mack's a Chicago Bear.
Yeah, but I think the Philadelphia Phillies, who are paying, everyone else on their roster about $6 million, on average. I mean, there's nobody. It's a bunch of kids. And Bryce now.
Right.
It's a great situation. The money was there. They could have gone higher, and they could handle the bonus, especially the way Robert laid it out. It could be $50 million, but broken up at $10 million over 5 years. In terms of the cash flow.
Right.
I mean, that's a smart way to do it for Bryce too.
Right.
You keep your salaries low. That's going to spread out throughout the 13 years still. Like I said, for payroll tax purposes. So the AAV still stays at $25 million, which is great. I mean, that's a great number for a superstar. But there was just a smarter way, cash-wise, to do this deal.
It certainly seems so, especially when all these intricacies that Robert was talking about when it comes to residency, where you're at. And that's where the deferred, because we talked about this. Robert was on a longer version of the podcast, and I remember him talking about it. The smart money would be to defer salary when you retire, if you're going to live in a non-tax state, Florida, for example.
Vegas,
Nevada, state of Washington, Tennessee, Texas, wherever you want to go there, and you'd earn that money and you wouldn't have to pay a state income tax on it. Fascinating that, he's got the 3.5% Philadelphia tax, the city tax, on top of the state income tax when it comes to that. I mean, we're in New York State and we pay, is it 8%?
Yeah, a little more.
Yeah, a little more than 8%. I think it's 8.75%.
So it's comparable.
It's comparable to what he'd have to pay there. So that part to me is fascinating. But not deferring money, especially when, what was the one thing everybody tweeted out? Bobby Bonilla's contract, he'll still be getting paid after Bryce.
4 years after Bryce is done with this.
That's astonishing to me, right? I mean, he's still.
I love those Mets.
Right. But still getting paid well after the fact. And
that's not a bad gig, right?
No.
To be retired and having non-taxable income like that coming in if you're Bryce Harper, I don't get it.
Right.
I don't get it.
It's a great annuity, but he's also 26 and he's probably not thinking about that.
But come on. We're all smarter than that now. There's people that exist that should be in these guys' ears, and I'm sure there are. I mean, we're downplaying this a little bit. Sure. There's got to be a reason this all happened, but let's push forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Why is this 13 years? Why is this no opt-outs? Why is this? I mean, the rest of this contract is questionable to me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is almost like I don't feel like working on this anymore, says Scott Boras and Bryce Harper. I'm done.
Sure.
Right? Like,
I'm
I'm
done.
done.
The last one we're going to do to play baseball.
I don't want to have to think about opting out and whether or not my value is better now than it was, or because that's it. I mean, you've forfeited control. There is a full no trade clause. That's fine, because I will say this, especially later when those salaries drop to 22 in the late 2020s. By the way,
sure,
if you can think that far ahead, that's going to be a pretty tradable contract if he's still a decent player. $22 million in 2028 could be.
That'd be nothing to the Yankees.
50th in the league. You know what I mean? I mean, at that point.
If they continue to escalate the way they've been escalating.
Yeah,
yes.
So it is a tradable contract, and he does have control over that. But not putting options in a league where players are losing control over their finances seems silly. Why not at least give yourself the ability to say, I'm done with this, and I need to go elsewhere, or I need to reevaluate my value, or anything. It just seems silly because there's no out now.
There's no out.
This is his payment now.
And what if baseball expands?
Yeah,
right. I mean that's been talked about
globally. I mean, the money could get big. I mean, that's what happened with basketball pretty quickly.
Yes.
The second they started to infuse the international scene, man, the TV and the money got real big. I mean, that's why you're seeing $50 million for LeBron in 3 years here. That's no joke.
It's not.
That's happening.
It's not unfathomable that there'd be a Major League Baseball team in Tokyo.
Yep.
China.
Yep.
And if that happens,
Dominican.
Right. If that happens,
Puerto Rico. Yeah.
The money would. You're right. It would be like NBA. It would just explode.
Yeah, and that is what happened, and people didn't see it coming. But the money is ridiculous in the NBA.
Yeah, because they have a distribution deal in China.
Crazy.
Which is massive.
Crazy, and we know baseball works in Japan.
Yes,
we know it does.
Yeah, I saw the Tom Selleck movie. Yeah, so
yeah, you're dating yourself.
So in summary, I mean, this is a massive deal. We've been waiting for this deal to drop. Let me ask you this question: what does this deal mean for Mike Trout? Because you mentioned him. He could be the greatest center fielder of all time.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that before. At Philly, he certainly has got to be on his radar.
Yeah, hometown.
Right? I mean, he's like, we know Mike Trout because he's a great player, not because of where he plays.
Contrary, actually.
Yeah, and because of the taxes. Yeah. What Robert said there, it wouldn't make sense for him to stay with the Angels.
No, he's getting killed out there right now on his $33 million salary. But here's the thing, the conversation quickly switched from Bryce to Harper, or Bryce to Trout. What's going to be next? And I started to see the stat comparisons and people sticking up for Bryce Harper. Let's just stop that conversation.
Trout's
It
a
is
much better
not
player.
even close, people. Mike Trout is so far ahead of everybody, not named Mookie Betts right now. It's sick where Mike Trout is statistically. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer today. And he's not an old man.
Right.
So yeah, here's the thing. You're not going to hear Mike Trout and Mike Trout's agent coming on Twitter and saying, we got to make sure this guy is the highest paid this, and the numbers are this. And that's not going to happen with Mike Trout. Mike Trout wants to go out there and play baseball, and he's going to get paid well for it, but it's not going to be about the headline for Mike Trout. But if value is value, we're over $40 million on Mike Trout, and we're not even close. I mean, if we're taking the average salary into it, we're over $40 million for sure. Manny Machado's not worth 30. He got 30. Manny Machado's not worth $300 million. So,
and this is 2 years down the road, correct?
Yeah, there's 2 more years left on Mike Trout's deal, this and next. Look, if those Angels are, trending southward still, we're going to hear around this July deadline about Mike Trout being on the trade block. It's going to happen.
Not to get too deep in the weeds in this, if the Phillies had Trout and Harper,
yeah,
could they afford to pay anybody to pitch? I mean, we're talking close to $60 million in 2 players.
The luxury tax is going to rise. I mean, it's like a salary cap. It increases every year. You got to hope that there's a jump with this new CBA. Maybe some things get restructured. There's going to be people. There's going to be a lot of players, and the Players Association itself will be gawking at the fact that superstars aren't being able to get paid. I mean, Bryce Harper at $25 million per year is going to come up, right?
Yeah,
because he came into this thing wanting 40. So
and people were wondering if there was collusion in Machado and Harper not being signed.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. Now, to this point, and we sort of glazed over it with Robert, the Dodgers offered 4 years for $168. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money in a very short period of time.
That is, anyone who listens to our podcast knows that's the structure I was pushing for. That is cash and control. I mean, that is maximizing everything for you. I'm flabbergasted that didn't get considered strongly, because you make $170 million, then you get to go back to free agency at age 29. That sounds pretty good to me. But I get it. I think I sort of get it. I mean, Bryce just gets to play baseball now.
Doesn't have to worry
there's
about
nothing else to talk about anymore. This is what I'm getting paid. This is it, and end of conversation.
And we'll see if it gets the John Tavares treatment when he goes back to
did you see that?
Washington
Plastic snakes getting thrown at him.
That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's the other thing. He's going to play Washington quite a few times every year.
Right.
Yeah, and as a Mets fan, that's great. Thanks for sticking in the NL East, bud.
Yeah, well,
that's great. A lefty in Citizens Bank Park. My goodness.
But what is interesting is the division that he stayed in too.
Yeah.
Tax-wise.
That's
frankly. Right.
That's right. New York. Yeah, the jock taxes in New York. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Florida's okay though.
Florida's okay.
I don't know about Georgia. Do you?
No. But I know they're a good team.
I was going to say, there's 4 really good teams right now in this division.
Yeah, should be great. All right. Yeah. So that's, we're going to wrap it up here for our super emergency contract edition. The big whale landed in Philadelphia, the Phillies, Bryce Harper. Thanks to Robert Raiola. Follow him on Twitter @SportsTaxman. And, of course, make sure you check out the premium section. Go look at the Phillies roster and see what's on there. I mean, they're still spending cash, but when he looks at salary this year, Bryce Harper is 3rd on the team. I'm not going to tell you who's won. Go look for yourself.
They signed their ace pitcher to a 4-year, $45 million contract.
Yes.
So it's good times in Philadelphia right now.
Things are well. And the Philadelphia freedom, that's for sure, with the money. They don't have sales tax there. Maybe that's why he signed there. He can do all shopping in the state of Pennsylvania. All right, for Mike Giannetti, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast.